I wanted to take a moment to discuss what it means to write the script for a musical. For me, it was a stroke of luck. I was so immersed in the theater culture in college that I was inches away from a plot the whole time. The best advice I can offer for the point where inspiration becomes a story or a character is to immerse yourself in the things that fuel you. I was in love, I was buried in my art form, and the result was that my honest self was able to come out through the script and the characters and those I knew. But of course, writing as an art requires a lot more. For me, it was an issue of understanding what made my fledgling characters tick. I knew what pace I wanted the script to have, and roughly the kind of people that they were going to be. So, I sought out Heinlein and Scalzi, and other writers who kept a high pace with their dialogue. Thankfully, Elizabeth Haden's inspiration kept my characters real and vulnerable. And, bit by bit, writing short pieces on each, one after another, I was able to tie the bits of myself and my memories to believable personalities, characters you could really fall in love with and care about, characters you hated, characters you needed to know more about, characters that when they opened their minds and their mouths and dialogue came out, it meant something, and it was something that you would remember. Gathering books on writing samples and, of course, all of the Campbell work that went into it was a huge part of the undertaking as well, needing to know the story structure and how things interacted, how pieces were cut together, how story elements truly meshed together. It was a huge educational process that took many, many years to master. But then came the first draft. Because our music was chosen, it was a question of listening to everything in the discographies again and again, breaking down the pieces one after another. I pored over the tracks and lyrics time and time again, changing characters in and out of the scenes until the narrative created by the music resembled something like a linear story. The pieces themselves tended to interconnect and find their own answers, and when it came down to listening to new pieces and finding new albums as time passed, the music sunk in like puzzle pieces, replacing the old and dropping in for the new, and bit by bit, the skeleton that had been created by the music took form and shape. But then, of course, it was time to adjust the music to meet the plot. A word here, a word there. Subtle changes to the score to make something downbeat to match the moment of tension. Research into what individual moments required as far as musicality went. Experimentation with new characters and new plot points in new places with a new song. It created that refined dialogue that could be poured into the show. Adjustment after adjustment to make sure the dialogue was spoken smoothly when read, and eventually the characters began to take on a life of their own. I could write a line, and when I read it, the voice of the character would shift ever so slightly, refining into something new, something solid for that character. The overall experience of connecting with the dialogue and the character choices and the individual pieces that made up a character directed the course of the show itself. The process of envisioning the story into a stage environment was my largest challenge. I began to see, speak, and dream in the universe. Friends began to take on roles in the club, and I eventually began to identify what would be the focus of the live script work. It took years of thinking and rethinking some of the scenes, but bit by bit the script took on a life of its own. And when the words were all but writing themselves, that's when I sought a cast. That's when it was time for the real work to begin. That was when I knew that Club 45 was reaching a point where it was its own life form, where the art itself had taken over, and I was just one of the many voices along the path who had been set aside to create this vast piece. Each individual character has a life of its own in this script. Each character has its own voice, its own center in the universe. Each character has value that can't be limited on the dialogue it has. Myself, I've gone through the story again and again, and each time I go through, I pick up on something new. I ask new questions, and each piece of the script gains a new color that I didn't see before. And in my mind, that's the real focal point for writing a good script. It's the point when the work you do and the effort you've put forth create something that's no longer of you. It's something all its own, something with a unique flair and a unique flavor. That, in my mind, is what really defines the artwork of scriptcraft. I wasn't afraid of what the actors would do to the script. After all, I knew we'd fix it in 45. Thanks for watching.